Think about those negative labels we sometimes all too freely give ourselves or give other people. If you buy into those negative labels, it hurts your self-esteem, but you don't have to let those labels hold you back.
Our next guest says you can change the way you see yourself and the people around you by just changing those labels. Author Vikki Carrel here to share a unique perspective on the power of labels. And we were just talking, we all have those labels. We all had people label us.
We do.
And we always remember the negative ones, don't we?
We do. You have to remember, a label is a classification. So when we label ourselves and others, we're classifying them. So think of some words, some common labels that you hear here at work, in your home, that your children probably hear at school. Smart, good looking, motivated. Now the downside, shy, fat, ugly. And we do have a tendency to absorb those negatives and quickly forget the positives.
Why do you think those labels not only are absorbed into who we think we are, why do they stick? Why do they last for so long?
Well, we buy into them, and we buy into the positive labels because they esteem us. And it creates a healthy emotional response that makes us feel more positive and confident. But we also buy into the negatives. And we do that because we personalize the label, and it creates within us an impulsive response that does just the opposite. It makes us feel a lack of esteem and less capable, and then we can't achieve goals and be successful.
If I remember that label, if someone labels me as whatever, like fat or whatever, and I remember that, does that mean I'm believing that? Am I buying into that by remembering it and believing it?
Well, you have a choice. You don't need to believe it. You have the power not to believe it, but first of all, you have to change your perception of the information that's coming in, and we all have the power and the ability to do that. But when we get a label over and over and over, unfortunately, we do remember the negatives, and it takes 5 positives to cancel 1 negative.
Talk about labels, you're kind of describing dumb sheep. I mean, we do. We take these in, and we don't think about how or what they mean to ourselves.
But it's powerful, and research shows us that labels really do impact and affect our esteem and our confidence and ultimately our ability to be successful.
Okay, so how do we flip them? How do we change those labels permanently?
We can, and we have to make the choice to do that. And it's also important to understand that there are, we have positive options out there. We don't need to be impulsive and react. We can choose to act and really empower ourselves. And one of those options is to reframe labels.
Okay, that's easier said than done. You're going to walk us through some scenarios. For example, say there's a coworker who is shy, labeled as a shy coworker. How do you reframe that into something?
Okay, she comes to you and she says, I really feel bad. I'm being told at work that I'm shy, even rude. I see myself as reserved and careful. So she has a choice here. She can either buy into that I'm shy and I'm rude, or no, I'm just reserved and careful. And so there is a choice there as to how we see ourselves and how we let it affect us. Absolutely.
Now, I don't want to counteract what you're saying, so I think it's powerful and important, but what's the fine line between changing a label and justifying bad behavior?
That's a really, really good question, because we all do justify. Justification usually comes when it's chronic justification, where you have an individual that just doesn't really see their behavior as negative or unwanted. I mean, and so why change it? Then you have the person that has been told a negative about themselves so long, and it's so ingrained that they really have, they're not able to change it on their own, and that's when you have to seek out professional help. But for most of us, reframing is just a real positive way to change a perception and to replace a negative word with a positive word. So should we talk about some scenarios?
Yeah, let's get some more.
How we can do this? Okay, stubborn daughter. You have a daughter, teenage daughter, that mom just sees her as stubborn and difficult.
And every parent's like, oh, I have one.
I have, or I will. Well, maybe the daughter sees herself as persistent. And persistent when it comes to accomplishing difficult tasks. So maybe mom could reframe that stubborn and replace it with persistent. Or how about dad, who feels like his son is so lazy? But mom sees the son very different. She sees him as selective, because she stands back and looks at the whole picture and sees that, yes, our son is a little lazy when it comes to homework, but he's up every morning at 5 o'clock to do a paper route. Is that a lazy kid? No, that's where you have taken a label and just you know, embellished it or made it just the whole person, and it's not. It's just one aspect of his life. Or how about the neighbor that seems anxious in social situations, but you know them well enough, that individual well enough to know that they're not anxious. They're just careful around people they don't know. So it's just taking a word that seems negative and changing it to a positive. You have something to,
well, the phrase that I like that you've said a couple of times is I see myself as. Is that really the step one, just to define how you see yourself or how you want to be seen?
Absolutely. We have nonverbal and verbal messages come our way all day long. It's like Post-it notes all over us at the end of the day. We have the choice to remove those negatives if we're not going to benefit from those, and to really reframe them and then focus on the positives. Too often we just buy into those negatives and let those positives, they're fleeting, and that's what we need to change.
You personally had a label of people attached to you that you tend to spin, right?
Let me share this. This is fun. Too often when I was in middle school and high school, I was enthusiastic and outgoing, and more than once I had a teacher say, Vicki, you're speaking too loud. You know, use your inside voice, so to speak. Indoor voice. Now, as a motivational speaker, to be, you know, outspoken and to have, you know, a voice that carries and to have enthusiasm is very positive. So we can have labels that seem to be negative at one stage of our life that then become a great skill set and very positive in another phase of life. The key point is to remember, you don't need to buy into labels. They're powerful only if you choose to believe them.
You choose your own labels. I love that right there.
You absolutely do. So choose positive ones.
Yeah, thanks so much,
Always connect with you and your message, Vicki. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.